Hey folks, just going to shoot a video this morning for Black Star Vinyl's One and Done contest. If you haven't been watching Black Star Vinyl, you should. It has a great channel, focuses a lot on metal. Yeah, I've just been enjoying this channel and thought I'd make an entry. A little bit of a difficulty in that I don't have any physical media in the house right now, so I'm gonna shoot this morning and hopefully come home tonight and edit in pictures of the album covers, and then get it in right under the deadline. So when I made this list, there are 11 albums here. They all ended up being Christian albums. I didn't intend for that to happen, but I guess it was the albums that I thought of that I didn't think maybe other folks would know already. And then, I guess it's just what I know best. So let's get started. The first album is Carson Cole and RU4. The album name is Main Street. This was an 80s Christian rock outing. Wasn't the heaviest album in the world, but the songs on it were pretty good. I guess maybe the strongest comparison I can make on the music might be maybe Corey Hart, something of that nature. But I enjoyed that album so much so that I've just ordered the vinyl on this album. But that's Carson Cole and RU4. The second album is Wild Blue Yonder. The reason this album makes the list, again, it's a one-off, but it's a band that features Christian vocalist Krystal Lewis. Krystal Lewis is probably best known for having sang on the Kirk Franklin single Lean on Me with U2's Bono and Mary J. Blige, and wow, there was somebody else on that single, and I can't remember who right off the top of my head, but Krystal Lewis has been in the Christian music scene for years, and she's just a tiny little lady with a really huge voice. She usually sings something in kind of adult contemporary. I kind of prefer her early career while it was still pop, it still had a really, really heavy black gospel influence. So Wild Blue Yonder. Now, Wild Blue Yonder is kind of just kind of 80s pop rock CD. It's probably, I wouldn't say it's outstanding, but it's especially if you're a Krystal Lewis fan, it's worth checking out. The third album on this list is The Screaming Rays. The Screaming Rays is also a one-time band that featured vocals with Krystal Lewis, and I'm not sure because there's not a lot of internet resources to go to look it up, but I believe that the other vocalist is her husband, Brian. But the Screaming Rays are kind of oh wow, as the term just flies right out of my head, kind of like Stray Cats, rockabilly. Wow. Yeah, it's a rockabilly album. featuring Krystal Lewis and I believe her husband Brian Ray on lead vocals. This album I think is a lot better than the Wild Blue Yonder album. Definitely worth checking out. Both of those albums, Wild Blue Yonder and the Screaming Rays. I think the Screaming Rays actually came out in the 90s, whereas Wild Blue Yonder came out in the 80s. But again, trying to find, there's not a whole lot of material on the internet about either one of the bands to get much of a history going on it. I will say this, Krystal Lewis started her career back when she was like 15. So I think, and that's when she was on I believe she was on a Nickelodeon show, and then she started her Christian music career around, I think she was signed at the age of 17 or 18 to that. So she's been singing for quite a long time. All right, so number 4. The number 4 album's a real bittersweet one. It's Vince Ebo, Love Is the Better Way. Great album, especially if you're in the vocalist. It has kind of maybe an adult contemporary feel to it, very soulful. Vince Ebo kind of became known among Christian audiences because he would sing backup for Charlie Peacock. Charlie Peacock was kind of an 80s, it started his career in the 80s, doing some kind of alternative stuff, kind of straddling the line between alternative and soul and R&B. One of his bigger albums was, I believe it was called The Secret of Time, featured songs like Big Man's Hat. And so Charlie was kind of, especially at that point, probably the strongest comparison I could make would be to maybe Simply Red. But his lyrical content was incredibly deep. But he had that soulfulness to his music. And Vince would sing backup for him, and then Vince was signed by Warner Alliance, and they put out the album Love Is the Better Way. His vocals are just amazing. The bad part of it was he committed suicide about a year after putting out that album. Don't know much about him or the history of why he went that route, but it's such a shame. I was listening to one of his songs the other day, wishing he were still around to sing, because he was an amazing talent. Number 5, Mesa. This was kind of a super group, I guess. The album itself was kind of acoustic, adult contemporary-ish, and it was good. But it featured Dana Key of DeGarmon Key, Dallas Home of Dallas Home and Praise. I think you probably have heard Rise Again, which was probably his biggest song at some point in your life if you've been in church at all, especially around Easter. And then Jerry Williams of the Christian group Harvest. Those three put out an album together as the group Mesa, and it was a pretty decent album. I think one of the highlights, I think they believe they covered Bob Dylan's I Still Believe. Yeah, so that's Mesa, and that came out, I believe, in the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. Then I think in the late 90s, it's so hard to do this list without any physical media. Tommy Sims, Peace and Love. It's kind of an R&B album. Tommy Sims came out of the rock group, Christian rock group, Whiteheart. He played a kind of pivotal role on the albums leading up to his last one with Whiteheart, which was called Freedom, which I consider to be one of the greatest rock albums ever. I mean, every sound on Freedom, it was just meticulously done. His bass playing was probably about as prominent as any I've heard on a rock album. It was stellar. From there, Tommy got some notoriety because he and Wayne Kirkpatrick and somebody else wrote the song "Change the World," which ended up on Eric Clapton ended up doing on the movie soundtrack for Phenomenon with John Travolta. And then from there, Tommy went on to play bass for Bruce Springsteen during a period where Bruce was touring without the E Street Band. Since then, I guess he's been involved somewhat in music. I haven't seen too much of his name lately, but he was an immense talent, and this album was good. It was really good, and I think my favorite song was a song called 100 off of that album. But Tommy Sims, Peace and Love. 7, Greg Carson, It's Too Late. Greg Carson, I am going to try to pull up his Wikipedia because I should have had it up already. He was a bass player that played for I believe the rock group Badlands. And let's see. Okay. So he's a bass player, played most notably with Badlands. This is all according to Wikipedia. He has also played and recorded with Surgical Steel, Steeler, Legs Diamond, Blindside Blues Band, Die Happy, Red Sea, Pat Travers, and Daryl Mansfield, among others. Alright, so he put out an album in '94 called It's About Time. And that album, it's bluesy, but it rocks hard. It is a phenomenal album. I love it. I couldn't believe it. I picked it up used out of a shop here in town. Took a risk on it. You know, it had some songs that kind of made me think, well, this could be really cool. It was a blind buy, and it was a great one. I think you can still get that on Amazon through third-party sellers for less than $10. It would be a great pickup. You can also at the end of this, I might put some links to some of the songs, big songs, so that you can check them out. So that leads me to the next album, Red Sea, Blood. Christian metal band. Geez, I don't even really know how to describe their sound right off the top of my head. It's been a minute since I've probably listened to that album, but I thought about it because again, it was one of the ones that Greg Carson played on. Yeah, so it can be kind of a hard album to find because it's out of print. But yeah, it's a good album. That's Red Sea with Blood. Number 9, Minear. Again, a harder It's a little bit harder Christian metal album from the guitarist of the Crucified. Um, this is one of the few that I don't own. I've listened to a little bit on YouTube, and I'm going to try to pick it up. Believe Retroactive Records just reissued the album, and so I'm going to try to pick it up before it gets out of print. Just a few things I needed to pick up before that. So, yeah, Minear. Number 10. This was a reissue from earlier in the year, Recon, Behind Enemy Lines. Great album, featuring the song Dreams. Brilliant album that so thankful that Rox Records reissued it. I picked up both the orange vinyl and the CD package. Probably one of the best albums on this list. Except for maybe this last one. This last one is number 11. Chicago Vera. Chicago Vera was kind of a project, or not a project, it was a band. Up in the early 80s, a gentleman by the name of Steve Taylor came along, and he started one of the most unique careers because he was a Christian satirist. So he did albums like I Want to Be a Clone and Meltdown and On the Fritz and I Predict 1990. And all of those albums were great. His lyrics were always tremendous. Though you have to be honest, the music wasn't always the greatest. In fact, on I Want to Be a Clone, it was almost kind of embarrassing. But the musical quality of his albums were progressing from the beginning. You can hear the progression, probably more so than a lot of artists, because it was just significant. And then he started, I guess it was some of the relationships he was forming with people like Dave Perkins and Lynn Nichols and members who would become Chicago Vera. You can hear it progressing. I Predict 1990 was a really good album with songs like Jim Morrison's Grave. And so then they decided to make the jump, try to make a jump into the mainstream, and they released Chicago Vera. Brilliant alternative rock album. The rock's pretty heavy, but with Steve Taylor's brilliant lyrics, though a little different. Whereas when he was doing his solo stuff, it was really satire that was aimed at Christians to make them think about issues. With Chicago Vera, it was just more rock. It was just rock lyrics, not so much with any sort of agenda, though very substantial in meaning. And then even though that band only lasted for one album, and you wonder why, and they put out a really good album, they put out an excellent album. Why didn't they take off? I don't know, but it was still a good step for Taylor, because when he came back and did Liver and boy, I can't think, Squint. When he did those two albums, it was kind of back toward what he was doing, writing about issues to make Christians think, but the musicality was so much better on those albums. That was really a nice step for him. And wow, I've been talking for 20 minutes, so let me wrap this up. I'm going to say good night or good afternoon, and I'm going to go to work and hopefully edit this tonight and get it done. I have missed interacting with you guys a little bit, but thankfully I'm starting to feel a little better. And so this is Black Star Vinyl down, and I guess next time I'll be putting one up. It'll probably be for Farley this weekend. So hope you all are doing well, and see you soon.